41. This is a pretty excellent pilot. I adore this episode's structure, how, for example, we're dropped into the action without warning before we essentially spend the remainder of the episode gradually figuring out how we ended up there. The premise is crystal clear and instantaneously enthralling, as well as quite unique, while the cast, Cranston in particular, immediately shines. 40. The scene in which the axe-wielding cousins strut into Walter's house, then bedroom, unbeknownst to Mr. White as he's busy in the shower, is simply heart-pumpingly tense. The ending of the scene is perfectly creepy, as a cleaned-up Walt exits his bathroom to find his room and bed mostly bare, apart from the gazing eyeball of the kind of iconic pink teddy bear. We're also given the awesome and satisfying moment in which Jesse, with the help of Saul Goodman, purchases his parents' house from them. 39. A no rough stuff type deal is a solid and kind of fitting and accidental season finale. I use the word accidental because Breaking Bad's first season aired during the 07-08 writer's strike, so an abundance of shows were forced to shorten up their respective seasons. I use the word fitting because 107 concludes with the stunned faces of Walt and Pinkman. Their jaws dropped at the sight of Tuco literally beating his boy Nodos to death before chuckling kind of nonchalantly. This is the harshest form of reality in regard to the cartel that Walter has been forced to view thus far. Given that this is only the end of the beginning of the story, you as a viewer get the impression that the stakes have raised, and it's more than likely that much more blood is about to be shed. 38. Cancer Man provides us with our first in-depth look at the mind of Jesse Pinkman, whom we learn has a genuinely big heart. His relationships with his family members are so authentically depicted. It's a beautiful touch that Jesse nostalgically goes through his old high school materials. One of these papers graded expectedly poorly by Mr. White. 37. End Times is a pretty great penultimate piece of the masterful fourth season. The hair-raising encounter between Walt and an angry armed Jesse, it's bloody fantastic. Cranston and Paul are Emmy-worthy here, while the episode's final moments are rather anxiety-inducing, as Walt observes an ultimately suspicious Gus as he finally decides not to enter his vehicle, underneath of which Walt had planted a bomb. 36. Not only do we get a very unique and interesting opening scene featuring a Heisenberg-centric music video, we also get a continued deepening of the character of Hank. He's forced into an intensely traumatic, though entertaining, situation involving the explosion of a fucking turtle, the head of Danny Trejo formerly atop its shell, along with at least the limbs of certain individuals by whom Hank is not really accepted. 35. The dinner scene consisting of Walt, Skyler, and Jesse is gloriously awkward. I'm always captivated whenever viewing the quiet and powerful scene in which Walt discusses with Pinkman his history with gray matter technologies. His line about checking the company's worth every single day says a lot about Walt's deep jealousy and resentment and regret. Things feel perpetually high stakes in Buyout, including the abrupt cliffhanger. 34. Shotgun features one of the greatest montages/time-lapse sequences I've witnessed on television. The dinner scene at the Schraders is bloody phenomenal, as the Heisenberg/Gale case is as good as solved before a drunk, astronomically arrogant Walt basically puts Hank back on his tail due to not wanting the late Mr. Bedecker to receive credit for his work. 33. Walt is in full-fledged, egotistical, nefarious asshole mode at this point, which is quite entertaining in the desert meeting scene, which birthed the famous "you're goddamn right" meme. The final scene is tense, then extremely tragic, as we get the death of the great Mike Ehrmantraut, caused by the immensely hateable and hittable, intentionally and effectively so, Walt. 32. The final scene is so intense and important, unfortunately so, to the gradual shaping and darkening of the character of Walter White. Cranston is so literally quietly powerful during these horrific moments. I've always adored the extraordinarily sweet and wholesome interaction between Walt and Donald Margolis, father of Jane, as the two vent about their respective pseudo-children and children. The conversation is small and poignant, even more so after having viewed Phoenix in its entirety. 31. We get the quietly spectacular introduction to the great Gustavo Fring, Esposito's performance being instantaneously compelling. Mandela's final moments are fucking tense and captivating in regard to the character of Walt and the pressing choices that lie before him. I'm referring to the moment in which Walt gets the text from Skyler that the baby's coming, while only having a very minuscule window of time to deliver his signature blue meth to Gus's men. And it's always fascinating when Walter is faced with the family family versus money conundrum, and in this particular instance, he chooses the latter. 30. 51 really exemplifies the dark, tragic state to which the White relationship has fallen. Anna Gunn, in particular, is brilliant here. The visuals of the scene in which Skylar enters, then sinks into the pool, is powerful with some great kind of chilling cinematography. 29. Bullet Points presents this wonderful combination of humor and drama. It's quite funny watching Skylar and Walt thoroughly prepare for their dinner with the Schraders, where they plan to present the conjured-up gambling addiction story. Then the scene in Hank's room, in which he reads from Gail's notes and jokingly refers to Walt as Heisenberg, is masterful TV. Cranston's performance in particular being pitch perfect. 28. Jesse and Hank's plot to kind of trap then capture Walt is so clever. The scene in which Asac Schrader cuffs Heisenberg is so bloody satisfying, while the bullet-raining cliffhanger is chaotic excellence. 27. This episode contains some of Breaking Bad's most important story beats and elements. Walt essentially has a job offer from Elliot, but due to Mr. White's immense pride, he refuses this essentially automatic financial comfort in favor of making his own money on his own terms. Then later in Grey Matter, we get probably one of the greatest scenes in the series, the talking pillow-centric scene. Every character has their moment to shine here. Hank is hilarious and awkward, munching intervention snacks and delivering confusing analogies to Walt. But Cranston in particular is goddamn brilliant, in which he performs his beautiful monologue about wanting to finally make his own choices, as he chooses not to go through with chemotherapy. Now, Walt, primarily to appease Skylar, does then decide to go through with chemo, which is when this Heisenberg persona is born. Walt is forced into a double life so that he can simultaneously abide by his family's wishes while getting to initially secretly live his life in the fast lane. We also get one of my favorite mega fun montages in the show featuring Jesse, Badger, and an impeccably groovy tune to which I pretty consistently listen. 26. The final scene of this episode is suddenly and surprisingly violent, while Mike's half-measure-centric story that he recites to Walter is beautifully performed by Jonathan Banks and perfectly written by Sam Caitlin and Better Call Saul co-creator Peter Gould. 25. The will he won't he subplot in regard to Jesse potentially spiking the cartel coffee with ricin is perpetually tension-inducing, while the final scene is simply exciting. The one in which Hank presents to Gomi and his ASAC evidence pertaining to both Gail Bedecker and Gus Fring, though the highlight of 407 is unquestionably Jesse's problem dog-centric confession to the support group. Aaron Paul proves in this moment that he is truly one of TV's finest actors. 24. Everything regarding Walt and Crazy 8 is simply fantastic television. The conversations had between these two are simple and compelling, kind of endearing, while it's brilliant and viscerally unfortunate when Walt learns that his current captor secretly snatched a piece of broken plate while Walt was left unconscious after a coughing fit. The moment in which Walt is forced to choke the life out of Domingo is quite powerful and phenomenally performed by Cranston. 23. It's Magnets time, bitch. Live Free or Die is a great kind of practical episode in which Walt and Mike are rather humorously forced to work side by side as they're constantly butting heads, thereby ignoring Pinkman. We also get the welcome return of Old Joe, as well as an intriguing kind of foreboding glimpse into the relatively near future in the episode's opening. 22. 4 Days Out is a really thoughtful, well-written sort of bottle episode. We get a story of survival and will with a particularly beautiful melancholic, if that's a word, and introspective little monologue from the great Cranston, focused on Walt trying to figure out what exactly the perfect moment would have been for his death, as he states that he's lived too long. Powerful stuff. 21. We're provided with a trio of scenes that really make Bug an excellent piece. There's the jaw-droppingly badass moment in which Gus stands up to an active sniper, chill-inducingly cool. Then there's the inherently tense scene in which Jesse, who is in possession of ricin, has dinner at Gus's home. And of course, the wild and messy fight between Jesse and Walt.